actually buy caffeine pills locally?
Not sure. But like I know that there was a time when they had caffeine gum. Like I'm not sure if they still have it available locally, but like yeah, when I was in high school, the beginning of my caffeine addiction was because of that caffeine gum. Oh, welcome to Channel 14's Bodega Nights, by the way. I'm Jao.
I'm Paolo Saxol.
We're talking about addiction.
Yeah.
It was brought up by the fact that I started doing the whole vaping thing.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. It was on Bodega Nights a couple of weeks ago, I guess.
2, 3.
Yeah, whenever this comes out, right?
3 because I could clearly remember that was during like this last or second to last week of sem break.
Okay. Yeah, but then like I released them later on though.
I know.
Like I released them a bit later.
Oh, so you're talking about releases, not when he was like last actually here.
Yeah. Because I think like a month or so after like he left, some of the episodes have yet to come out. I have no idea.
Some of the episodes have actually yet to come out. We've got like, let's see, there was the one on Slight.
Well, the thing is,
the ones that were released so far were Slight, comic books, and history gaming. Did the first Bodega Nights we do get released?
No. The recording wasn't very good.
So that's enough. So you don't want to release it?
It's gonna be a tough edit, you know.
Okay. So is that the last piece of content we did, or is there still more?
For Bodega Nights, I think we have like one more left.
Okay.
1 or 2, depending on how much like work I want to do. Yeah. But then, you know,
let's see.
Time and technology hasn't been on my side.
Technology or the internet specifically?
Well, yeah, fine. The connection to the internet hasn't been very like good.
Okay.
Yeah. It's really funny though because like the way okay, so nothing has been released on Channel 14 for the past like couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Because of my connection to the internet. But like 10 days without an internet connection.
And technically right now you're right now the I'd say the gatekeeper of the master archive, if you will.
More or less, yeah. That is going to change when we start doing video content, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, it will.
Because like that's something I think that all of us have a little more experience with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting though, like the way the way like my tech support calls went. Yeah, because it was interesting because like they have a script that they follow, right?
Yeah.
Like when you call in tech support, they have a script. They ask you for identification, to verify that you are who you are, your phone number,
yeah,
etc. And when it comes to like the actual troubleshooting, they take you through the steps.
Okay.
So whenever you call, you say like, yeah, hi, I'm blah blah blah. I am the son of blah 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 with address at blah blah blah. So like they don't have to ask you those questions. And like I made sure to say, instead of why don't I have the internet,
yeah,
very specifically asked, why do I not have a connection to the internet?
Okay.
Because the internet is never down. It is only your connection to the internet that is down. Like,
yeah.
So once a tech support person hears that, they know that you know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Like, I don't have a connection to the internet. I've tried to power cycle my modem. I've tried to power cycle my router. I have checked for loose connections. I double checked and triple checked. And then the guy says, so there's still no connection to the internet. Yes, sir, there's still no connection to the internet. So he says, okay, we'll put a tech support ticket in, and if nothing happens, call back tomorrow and we'll send somebody over. Like, oh, that wasn't very hard.
Okay.
So yeah. Basically, I waited like too long when it was just a matter of saying, hey, I don't have a connection to the internet. Like, oh, a connection to the internet. Yes, he knows what he's talking about.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And there's law school, which is... Oof.
What about law school?
You know how it is. Like, this is like the hardest I've ever like studied in my life. The hardest I've ever worked in my life, actually.
Okay.
Like undergrad Zhao would look at law school Zhao and just stare in disbelief. Like, really? This is the person you've become.
Okay.
You're using index cards now. Like, what?
Oh, God. Seriously? You've already come to that point?
Yeah, dude.
That point where you're going to start, where you start making self-evaluations based on past version of yourself and current self?
Yeah, why not? It's look at how far I've come, or whatever.
At that point, it's like it's largely an indication. Yeah, it's largely an indication that that either something important in your life has happened, or well, a lot of things have happened, or you made a choice that was like alien to your past self.
Yes.
Kind of like,
namely law school and podcasting. Like, yeah, law school and journalism. Like, come on.
Yeah. Huh. Funny.
You know, two things that I never thought I'd ever get into.
Huh.
Though two things that I always probably should have gotten into much earlier on.
You're reminding me of a number of things that I realized have happened to me over the past 2-3 years.
So basically,
after I stopped studying in Manila and just came home.
Okay, like what? Like what would have been like these realizations?
Well, it's more like it's like more like changes, realizations, and things I noticed. First thing I noticed is that I got more into gaming.
Oh.
Into the whole gaming thing, because largely gaming was just a casual pastime that was subordinated to something that I'm probably gonna get back into more of, which is largely anime and otaku culture. Mind you, I have an idea for a animation related podcast I like to do with my bro and some people we may know.
Okay. Yeah.
And also, funnily enough, this is something I also have come to a realization of. A personal change in politics, though I'm just gonna end there. Unless it's fine for me to speak of it.
Well, as long as it doesn't get too, like, you know.
To what?
As long as it doesn't get too heated.
Oh, it's just me coming to a realization that back in the day, I was more... Back as early as, like, anywhere from 3 to 4 years ago, I was more of a liberal. Well, not a full-on liberal, but more of a liberal. But now I'm, well, more of a conservative.
Ah, well, it's nothing, you know. There's no shame in that, like... It's always good to be, like, somewhere in the middle, though, like...
Yeah, but yeah. Largely I've been ensuring that I don't go into... Like,
not into Glenn Beck territory anymore.
Well, basically the idea is, like, when I look at politics, I see, like, the clear center, then there's, like, center left, center right, then there's the portions that are, like, these bars that I would like to call the clear left and the clear right, or just the left and the right, yeah, and then at the fringe is the extreme, so the extremes of both.
So, like, you have, on the extreme left, the communists, and on the extreme right, the Nazis.
Yes.
That's pretty much it. But then, like, the thing is, it's alright to have, like, I guess, like, views from both sides.
Hmm.
But then the metaphor of, like, of like a political left and a political right, and equating it to being liberal and conservative is largely an American.
It's largely an
invention,
American.
right?
It's largely an American invention. And to be fair, from what I recall, the concept of the left and the right was actually was largely an invention that originated from the French Revolution.
Then like the whole liberal and conservative ideology or whatever, right?
Like the duology of liberal on left and conservative on right.
I mean, what does it mean when one is liberal and when one is conservative? Right? Because like once you like what's the what is because if you're going left and right, there has to be some point where the left and the right, or the liberal and the conservative, diverge in order for there to be a distinction between the two. And my understanding is that the conservative wants to conserve culture, economics, etc., like maintain the status quo.
To a good extent, yes.
That's why it is conservative, because you're conserving the status quo. Whereas the liberal wants to break from the status quo. Now, if you have a society where what is commonly referred to as liberal now, so like, so say, what is quintessentially liberal? What is something that is quintessentially liberal? Because like, if you look at the situation of like guns in the Philippines, for example, the way that we have, the way that we control our guns in the Philippines, would seem very liberal to somebody in the United States.
Yes.
Whereas the liberal in the Philippines would like to liberalize it, quote unquote, not liberalize, but like a liberal position with regard to guns in the Philippines would be the conservative position in the United States. Right?
But when you frame it in that way, so by framing it that way, that also seems to be an indication that there's been a long-standing thing against the private ownership of guns in the Philippines. If I'm correct, that's been the case for a while.
Well, the main difference between guns in the Philippines and guns in the U.S. Is that here in the Philippines, gun ownership is
a privilege.
It's a privilege, yeah, and whereas in the U.S. it's a right. So yeah, it's different, you know.
Different situation.
Yeah.
What brought about the situation, though?
What, here?
Yeah. Was it a law? Was it something in the Constitution?
We don't have anything in the Constitution that pertains to it, so it's got to be legislation.
So okay.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
Oh, okay.
Like I know, like I have my theories as to why it ended up in the American Constitution. It was paranoia, I think, that gave the Americans right to bear arms. The reason it's enshrined in the American Constitution, I would think, right, is on paper it's because of that John Locke idea of the inherent right of the people to revolt if they don't like their government.
Yeah.
But I would like to think that the Bill of Rights in the U.S., particularly the part to do with guns, exists as a reaction to the paranoia of being recolonized by the British.
Probably the paranoia of being recolonized by the British, I guess.
So, like, yay, we are independent. Now we have to make sure that if the British come back, we can fight them off.
Largely, but my personal theory on that, though, is that back in the day, I'd assume that because of the strife occurring at the time, we had a situation where the leaders of the successful revolution were in a situation where they did not this is largely similar to what you said about the British coming back, but But my theory extends further to not just the British, but anyone else, on the other hand, who might do something to subjugate the now liberated people.
Well, yeah, but then I don't know, because when you look at law,
yeah,
like a lot of law can be explained as a product of its time, right?
Yeah, which is largely I'm saying that the part of the legislation that legislated the right to bear arms may have come out as a reaction to a potential future event.
I shouldn't use the word legislation though when we talk about the Constitution, because it isn't ordinary legislation. It's the Constitution.
So basically, article.
Well, yeah, the provision in the Constitution.
The provision, the article.
Yeah, because the reason the Constitution is called the Constitution is it is what constitutes everything that is to do with your state.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm gonna ask a rather interesting question. Do you know of any countries that don't have a constitution?
Well, it depends, right? Because I think every country has to have a highest law of the land. But the manner in which the constitutions of different countries sort of manifest themselves, quote unquote, we as, like, people,
yeah,
under a civil law tradition, we'd find it kind of weird. Because constitutions can be either written or unwritten.
Yeah.
So, like, the written
because one of the
constitution...
things I'm actually trying to note is, like, sure, I'm familiar with the idea of the Constitution within a society built upon that tries to build its law based on a democratic republican base. But I'm trying to look at it at the idea of, because, like, when I think of a constitution, I think of that. So I also know for a fact that there are some countries, like in certain places in Africa, the Middle East, or even some places in Asia that have these laws that have a far different legal regime than what we know of based on our legal
system.
Based on our legal system.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm just basically wondering what it's like with there, whether they have a quote unquote constitution or basic law or something.
Going back, it depends on what you mean by the word constitution, right? Because, like, if you consider the Constitution as the highest law of the land, then every country has, like, a hierarchy of laws.
Okay.
Right. The US, the Philippines, we have what's called written rigid constitution.
Yeah.
Which is, like, it's there on a piece of paper. You give it to somebody. That is the Philippine Constitution.
Okay.
And from Article, etc. Right.
And then there's the case of the British.
Yeah. Then there's the case of the British Constitution, which is an unwritten, flexible constitution, which is how do we explain this? It's like an informal collection of laws that they hold to be higher than others.
Okay.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be, like, written law, but it could also be, like, cultural norms and practices. So part of the British Constitution is, like, the respect for monarchy.
Okay.
Now, if for whatever reason the monarchy in the UK is, like, deposed or dissolved or whatever, then that sort of aspect of their constitution will cease to be part of the constitution.
Okay.
Without an act of Congress,
or an act of Parliament.
Yeah, or an act of Parliament.
Okay.
So yeah, I would think that every country in the world has a constitution in the sense that there is a highest law of the land, but not every country has a document that they can present and say, this is the constitution of the insert country here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I guess that's just my understanding, though.
Okay. I don't know. It makes sense because I tend to hear things like constitution or basic law.
Yeah, so that's sort of what it is. It is that law which no other law can be superior to, you know. Which is arguably why the Supreme Court is like really imbalanced, like uber powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there. Wait, how did we get to the Constitution? Oh yeah, we were talking about like shifting politics and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Guns. So yeah, I was actually going to. I was talking about this with one of my law school friends earlier. Yeah. How like my theory about the American right to bear arms comes from the same place that our constitutional provision on land ownership comes from.
Okay.
Like we have a citizenship requirement for ownership of land in the Philippines, and which
is not, just to be clear, not tied to the economic provisions, or it's related.
Well, what I was going for was it was a reaction to the American colonization of the Philippines, right?
Okay.
Like in the early 1900s, the Americans started like leaving the Philippines little by little, right? Like with the Philippine Bill, the Jones Law, etc.
Yeah.
And as part of our paranoia of being recolonized, we clearly defined our territory. Yes. So that's Article 1. And on top of that, we also said that only Filipinos can own land in the Philippines. That way the Philippines is owned by Filipinos.
Okay. And to be fair, that makes sense because that makes sense in that regard because, to be fair, the American colonization, which by the way didn't end until a few years after World War II, would still be fresh in the minds of people.
Yeah. Then but when you look at like
at least at that time.
Yeah. When you look at the development of the Philippine Constitution, like a lot of it is just copy pasted from the previous one. Like I don't know. So, say the national territory
was that's always been there, or at least it's been there since the 50s.
Since 35.
Oh, so it's been there even before. That was before or after the occupation by Japan?
That would be before.
Because if it's 35, then that would be the Commonwealth.
Yep. Well, the way the legal system worked then was the highest court of the Philippines was the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay.
Right. So it was a lot like the way the states in the U.S. are now, right? They each have their Supreme Court, but then I guess you can appeal them to the federal court. I'm not sure.
Well, there is the appeals court. Each district has its own appeals court, and each district is made up of if I'm correct, there were 9 districts.
Where? Huh? What?
No, it's like I recall hearing.
Where are we talking about?
The U.S. legal system, because I know for a fact that there's a legal, I hear every now and then I've read stuff about the 9th District Supreme Court, and each district tends to refer to a certain selection of states.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess. Okay, yeah. But
I don't know how the states are grouped though.
Probably geographically, I guess.
I don't know because I don't know. I found it in. I think I saw Alaska being in the same district as Colorado, which is weird considering that if we have to use geography, then technically it should be closer to Washington and Oregon.
Well, yeah, I guess. Then there.
So basically, back in the Commonwealth days, isn't that technically what Puerto Rico is going through at the moment? Because it's still U.S. territory.
Yeah, I guess. But then so that's how it was. Like if you look at like the old, the really old cases from like the 30s, from the 40s, all of the titles were U.S. versus for like the criminal cases.
Oh, okay.
Like now we have people of the Philippines versus, because sovereignty rests in the people of the Philippines.
Okay.
During the Commonwealth, the sovereignty was the U.S. for us. Like, we were sort of independent, but not really.
Okay.
We had our own constitution, but our judicial system was still under the supervision of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay.
So there. That's interesting, I guess. I should be teaching constitutional law to like undergrads at where you study.
I don't know. I guess that should work.
Or no, dude, I hate constitutional law.
Well, I guess that's the case.
With the exception of Article 3. Article 3 is great. It's our Bill of Rights.
Oh, okay.
Like everybody should at least read through Article 3 of the Philippine Constitution.
If he doesn't read everything, Filipino, at least that.
Yeah. Well, it's weird, right? Because like our constitution is kind of verbose. Right?
Verbose.
Like it's fairly long.
Okay.
As far as constitutions go, and like say Article 1, I think you can do away with that. You know.
Why can you can do away with that? Because it should be assumed.
Because why do we need to define our national territory when it isn't binding on anybody else but us? Because there's that principle of state sovereignty, right? Like nothing is above the state.
So basically, it's redundant.
Yeah, sort of like.
So you could say that Article 1 can be omitted because it's redundant, and or because it's to be assumed.
Well, it isn't binding on anybody but us.
Okay.
Like that's it. State sovereignty. So.
Right.
What's it? When I talk about state sovereignty, I'm not talking about like the people in relation, like the people of the Philippines in relation to the Philippine government. Okay. I'm talking about the Philippines in relation to every other country in the world. Right? They have, each country has sovereignty, and one state cannot impose its sovereignty over another. Right? Like generally accepted principle of international law. So like that just won't work.
Okay.
So yeah, who are we going to enforce that particular provision of the Constitution against? Right? So we don't necessarily need a definition of our national territory but then I guess it's good to know that it forms part of the law of the land.
Yeah.
We don't need a preamble. Like, why? Right? The preamble doesn't create rights. Because that's all law really does, right? Law just pretty much creates rights.
Creates rights, creates legal protections.
Yeah, like that's all the law really does. Well, it also can also give like remedy, procedure, etc.
Remedy, procedure, and in a number of cases definition.
Yeah, but then like the preamble doesn't really
do any of that.
Doesn't really do anything, right? It's just
there.
It's just there, yeah.
So in short, it's ink.
Arguably, Article 2 is kind of useless.
Okay.
Like, because it isn't self-executory. It needs an act of legislation for it to take effect. So, like, I thought this was the highest law, but it's. What was I talking about?
Constitutional law.
Yeah.
Huh.
So yeah, with the exception of Article 3, like I'm not a big fan of constitutional law.
Okay.
And I think my grades reflect that.
Oh.
Because like we have a separate subject for Article 3.
Like a subject for the Bill of Rights.
Yeah. That's because it's like really important.
Okay.
Because it is our protection against the state. So it's no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That that sort of thing. Right to freedom of the press, all the
Okay.
all that fun stuff.
I see.
And it's also it is like it's like the source of a lot of controversy, right? Like
The Bill of Rights?
yeah, because controversy in the sense that Congress passes a law, and the power of judicial review is invoked. So
Yes.
somebody says to the court, "Yo, this law that was passed by Congress, totally unconstitutional." And one of the things that they like to say is it is violative of the due process clause. Like, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So like with the cybercrime bill, cybercrime law, it's been with the cybercrime law.
Yeah, it's been passed.
And it went through judicial review.
Yeah.
And they struck down some of the provisions contained therein as unconstitutional.
Okay.
I'm actually glad that they did. Like the collection of real-time data was struck down as unconstitutional, I think. I have to read the decision again, but I know that.
I recall the collection of real-time data and the kill switch the kill switch provision was taken down.
Yeah.
Or it was of special note of the things I noticed.
Libel, partially unconstitutional.
Partially unconstitutional, though, if I'm correct, most of the provisions on libel were retained.
Well, it depends, right? Because what was the big issue on libel?
I know the one that basically made indirect involvement guilty was taken down.
Yeah.
I can't really quantify the exact contents of that provision, but it was basically tantamount to basically if you liked, shared or commented on a libelous post, you were guilty of that act of libel.
Yeah. So I'm glad that was struck down as unconstitutional.
Oh yeah.
What else? There was another libel. There was another libel thing.
Was it related to the application to any and all future forms of
what was it?
of technology?
Oh, no, it was the liking thing, because it was the aiding and abetting, which like in the US they have this law where the user generated content on the site does not necessarily reflect the
views and opinions
blah blah blah, right?
of the owners or practically everyone involved except for potentially the person who made that content.
Yeah, so if somebody were to comment on channel 14 and say something that is libelous,
that would be
the whole aiding and abetting in cybercrime, particularly libel, would be we would have criminal liability there because we are allowing it to happen. And I think that was struck down as unconstitutional. Again, it's been a while since I've read the decision, so I have to check that out again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there, but a lot of these laws that are questioned, like the constitutionality of laws that are questioned, usually the go-to section, the go-to part of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's always good to know
the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huh. This was like a 30-minute discussion on constitutional law. Ugh.
The thing you don't like to deal with.
Yeah.
Oh well, I guess that's something I'm probably going to. It may or may not be something I may end up talking a little more about on talk. Either I talk more about talking or analyzing stuff with regards to microphones and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's like I've come to the realization that I'm probably going to need at least a 3.5mm jack microphone for
your capture card.
Yeah,
Yeah.
For my capture card, and technically having a second mic would be useful in case doing multiple people.
Yeah. Huh. They have those like locally, like really cheap, but then I can't speak to the quality of them. So
well, I thought this to myself as the justification of me getting a headset.
And
largely because I don't exactly have a set of cans at the moment.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I do have one, but technically it works best only with my console. And I can't really use that in conjunction with my capture card since it's USB.
Yeah. I was having this conversation with my mother earlier.
Yeah.
Because she has this nice speaker dock thing.
Speaker dock thing
like,
for the phone?
Yeah, for the iPhone 4S, for the iPhone 4S. That's a 30-pin connector, right?
Yeah.
Works perfectly fine. Amazing thing.
Yeah.
She got an iPhone 6 last year and realized... 5. She got a 5S. She got a 5S and was like, oh, this doesn't fit on this perfectly good set of speakers. So she was asking me, like, so what do you suggest? Should I get the one with, like, lightning, whatever? It's like, Mom, no. Like, any speaker set thing, whatever. Like, make sure it has a 3.5mm jack that way. Like, you're sure that it's going to work with everything.
As opposed to like a proprietary standard.
Yeah.
Because, like, right, just as a bit of a PSA, if people still actually need a reminder, Lightning and the big 30-pin connector thing that appeared on the iPhone 4S, those are proprietary standards used by Apple. And if you want to know what a universal standard is, well, look up USB, micro USB, and 3.5mm jack.
Yeah.
Because chances are, if you have a smartphone if you have an Android smartphone with it that was released within the past 2 years, it's going to have at least the micro B and the micro B and the 3.5mm jack.
Yeah, well, everything has to have a 3.5mm.
Yeah.
But like micro USB, that's like every phone company out there, with the exception of Apple, uses that. I think like all the manufacturers.
Though I'm wondering why micro B as opposed to mini B. I don't know. It's like I look at it and I think the only reason you're choosing micro B over mini B is because with micro B you can continue to make your smartphones thinner.
Well, yeah, I guess
because with mini B you're pretty much stuck with a certain thickness, which is like what the Droid Turbo is right now. Like,
well, yeah, that actually does make sense, right? Because it's the smallest like available thing out there. So
yeah.
Although, well, this is like the weird thing about Apple.
Yeah.
The Lightning connector got so much hate.
Really?
Yeah. It got a lot of hate because
I'm calling it now. The only reason it got hate was because it was a proprietary Apple standard, not because of the functionality.
Because it was proprietary to Apple. But more of, I think, because it was different, right? Like, oh, now I have to get an entirely new set of cables and like docks and stuff, right?
True.
But then, like, I do have to give them credit for doing something brilliant.
You don't have to think about where you're
which
putting
direction,
it in.
right? You don't have to think about the direction, whether it's like upside down or whatever.
And fun fact, you still have to deal with that with micro USB. And to be fair, if you have to deal with that with micro USB, there's also the chance that your connector could pop off.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard horror stories about the micro B connector popping off of their phone while it's still connected, which practically means that port is full, unless you pry it, unless you do phone surgery.
Yeah. Although the guys that came up with the USB standard, I think have a prototype for reversible USB.
Yeah, it's called USB Type-C, and it supposedly that new tablet that Nokia announced, the new Droid tablet, is going to be using that.
Yeah, so I guess that's a step in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have an open standard, or but USB is an open standard, right? It isn't just a standard.
Yeah.
Right.
Largely, it's an open standard. No, it is an open standard because, from what I know, you don't have to pay. You don't have to pay
licensing fees and stuff.
You don't have to pay exorbitant licensing fees as opposed to say a standard like Thunderbolt, because in the case of Thunderbolt, you're paying Intel a good amount of money just to use the standard.
Well, I guess. I hesitate to use the word standard to talk about
not the standard.
Thunderbolt. I think a good example of something that has become a standard that is proprietary is the MP3.
Okay.
Because, the MP3 is proprietary. It just happens to be free. The DLL you can get for free, etc. But, it's not an open standard in that it is licensed. And Linux distributions, if they distribute in the US, for example, because of licensing agreements, you can't release an operating system with the MP3 codec built in without having to pay for it. Windows and Mac have the MP3 codec built in, but Microsoft and Apple have had to pay.
And if I'm correct with Linux, it's mostly been per distro. It's been a per distro basis.
With Linux, usually they don't have the MP3 codec built in because Canonical isn't going to pay for being able to build in the MP3 standard. They can't redistribute the MP3 codec. What they can do is during installation tell the user download the MP3 codec, and they have an automated system for doing that.
Okay. So basically, if you have a new Linux install, when you're in the package manager for that first time, that's one of the things.
Yeah. Oh, the installation process, when you install, right? They give you a bunch of different options, how do you want to partition your hard drive?
Yeah.
What is your username, etc.
So they put it there.
Yeah. One of the things that they ask you is a step that is unique to Linux, and not all distributions do this, but a step that is unique to Linux is, would you like to download the MP3 codecs? Would you like to download Flash and Java? Because these are proprietary and cannot be redistributed, but can be downloaded for free.
Okay.
So there's that. Because licensing is kind of weird like that.
Huh, okay. So, though, when I think about the amount of licensing that probably goes into putting Thunderbolt into your laptop or your PC box, I start to understand a little bit more as to why Macs cost the way they do.
Well,
again, just a little.
Oh, once you start getting into it, that's the reason that all technology is so much more expensive than, the cost of production, right? When you look at how much stuff actually costs to be built, physically, it isn't really that much. A lot of it goes to intellectual property, which I guess is proper,
Intellectual property, R&D, and marketing.
Yeah.
And licensing fees. In a number of cases.
Yeah, licensing fees, that's intellectual property because
okay.
you are licensing a patent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and patent is an intellectual property.
So
because it is the creation of a human mind. The creation of the human mind, like what's his name? Engineer Belozos, when we did that interview for Kelp, actually gave like a definition of what intellectual property is.
creation of the human mind.
Yeah. So like an invention
Yeah.
is intellectual property, and that protection is supposed to keep people inventing. But then sometimes it can be excessive when you have like patent portfolios as part of the investment of a company, etc.
So,
And
isn't
software
that-
patents, those are kind of terrible.
Isn't that where the whole thing about patent trolling usually starts off from?
Yeah, because like because patents can be viewed as like commodities. They can be viewed as property, right? So say like you're protecting an idea, and this idea can make you money,
Okay.
right? Through licensing fees. So if somebody wants to use your patented idea, or your patented, say, process, or your patented machine, they have to pay you. They have to pay you pretty much like a portion or something. Now, what some inventors do is sell their patents to companies,
Okay.
right? Because you can transfer ownership of a patent, and because it is worth money in the sense that you can potentially get licensing from it, or
Yeah.
indeed manufacture. These companies collect a bunch of patents and start enforcing their patent claims against other companies that do something similar. So
Okay.
there, like in theory, patents are really good because they protect inventors, but then sometimes the way it's practiced, terrible.
Yeah. If I'm correct, those little problems are why patent trolling is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This of course is only like really applicable to the US because we don't,
I don't know. Did the cybercrime law did the cybercrime just in clarification with regards to the cybercrime law, did the cybercrime law tackle any sections in regards to
piracy? Yeah.
was it just a reiteration, or was it additional things stated about it?
Not sure.
Because I remember, I'm trying to recall a discussion that we had about with Miko a few months or even last year, in relation to like something with regards to internet content and certain a kind of internet content and some legal thing. I'm trying to recall, but I forgot exactly what it was about.
Child pornography?
No. And I'm almost certain it wasn't fair use, because it had something to do with something where I amounted it to basically saying that we did not have this in the country. Basically, the flow of the conversation went, I said that we don't have this in the country. Miko went on to say that we actually do, but then you clarified that we don't have this thing in the country. This legal thing.
Mm-hmm.